My mother didn't hesitate when she said it. She didn't lower her voice or glance around the room to see who might be listening. She just crossed her arms, sighed loudly, and let the words fall like a final verdict. "You're the most useless child I ever raised." For a moment, the world felt unreal, like I was watching my life from the outside. The living room was full. Relatives squeezed onto couches, teacups resting on saucers, the hum of casual conversation still echoing in the air. Then silence, the kind that presses against your chest. No one spoke. No one defended me. I was standing near the door, still holding the grocery bags I had bought on the way over. My arms ached from work, my back stiff from another double shift, but none of that mattered now. All I could hear was that one word repeating in my head. Useless. My younger brother avoided my eyes. My sister stared at her phone. An aunt cleared her throat, pretending to be interested in the pattern on the rug. Everyone heard it. Everyone accepted it. This wasn't new. It was just louder than usual. Growing up, I learned early where I stood in our family. I was the quiet one, the one who didn't demand attention, because attention always came with conditions. I was praised only when I was useful, and forgotten the moment I wasn't needed. My siblings were celebrated for their potential. I was measured only by what I provided. When my brother failed exams, he was under pressure. When I succeeded, it was expected. When my sister needed help, it was family duty. When I needed help, it was inconvenience. Some children grow up wanting love. I grew up trying not to be a burden. As a teenager, I learned to read overdue notices before my mother even opened them. I learned how to stretch meals, how to fix broken things, how to stay quiet when she was stressed so I wouldn't make it worse. I watched her worry and told myself that being invisible was a form of kindness. I told myself that one day she'd notice. But that day never came. That night, as she called me useless, memories crowded in. Every time I skipped something for myself, every time I sent money instead of excuses, every time I defended her to relatives who whispered that she was struggling alone. I wasn't angry yet. I was numb. "I do everything for this family," my mother continued, her voice sharp with frustration. "And what do I get? A child who gives me nothing back. Nothing." The word hit harder than useless. I looked down at the grocery bags. Rice, vegetables, cooking oil. Things she had asked me to bring. Things I paid for without thinking twice. My hands tightened around the plastic handles. I wanted to speak. I wanted to remind her of the nights I stayed awake calculating bills. The money I quietly sent when she said, "Don't tell anyone. They'll think I can't manage." But I didn't, because I had learned something important over the years. People who erase your efforts aren't looking for truth. They're looking for someone to blame. So I stayed quiet, like I always did. I nodded once, gently set the bags on the floor, and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one followed. Outside, the evening air felt cooler, heavier. I stood on the steps for a moment, staring at nothing, letting the humiliation settle into my bones. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably a message asking me to come back and help with something. I didn't check it. As I walked away, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not hatred, clarity. For the first time, I saw the truth clearly. My silence had been mistaken for emptiness. My loyalty had been rewritten as uselessness. And the most painful realization of all, she didn't forget what I'd done for her. She chose not to remember. That night, alone in my small apartment, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the ceiling. The word useless echoed in my head until it lost meaning, until it became something else entirely, a challenge. If I was so useless, then there was nothing left to lose. And that was the moment I stopped trying to prove my worth with silence, and started preparing to let the truth speak for me. The morning after my mother called me useless, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I had somewhere to be, but because my mind refused to rest. Her voice replayed in my head, sharp and certain, like a label she had finally decided to glue to my forehead. Useless. I made coffee and sat at the small table by my window, staring at my phone. The screen lit up with missed messages, family group chats, unanswered calls. I ignored them all. For once, I needed silence more than explanations. Without really planning to, I opened my banking app. At first, I just scrolled, then I stopped. There it was. A transfer from 3 years ago, marked rent urgent. Another from 5 years ago, larger, labeled hospital bill. As I kept scrolling, the list grew longer than I remembered. Monthly payments, emergency transfers, late night transactions made after desperate phone calls that always started the same way. "Please don't tell anyone." I leaned back in my chair, my chest tightening. I had never kept track properly. Not because the money didn't matter, but because I never wanted it to. Helping my mother wasn't supposed to be a transaction, it was supposed to be love. But love, I was realizing, shouldn't require erasing yourself. I opened my laptop and logged into my full account history. Year after year unfolded in neat rows of numbers and dates. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't exaggerated my role. I had been there, consistently, quietly, while she told the world she was carrying everything alone. I remembered each payment clearly now. The night she called me crying because the electricity was about to be cut off. The transfer I sent while sitting on a bus after work. The hospital stay when she swore she'd sell her jewelry rather than ask anyone for help. Then accepted my money without a word. The months I paid part of the mortgage so she wouldn't lose the house, while my siblings talked about vacations and upgrades. And yet, somehow, I was the useless one. The realization didn't make me angry right away. It made me sad in a deep, heavy way that settled behind my eyes. Not because I regretted helping her, but because she had rewritten my help into nothing. I thought back to all the times she took credit in front of relatives. "I manage everything myself," she'd say proudly. "I don't rely on anyone." I had smiled then. I had nodded. I had protected her dignity at the cost of my own. That was the betrayal. Not the lack of gratitude, but the deliberate hiding. I closed my laptop and rested my forehead against my hands. A part of me wanted to let it go, to continue the way things were. It would be easier. Silence always was. But something had changed the moment she called me useless in front of everyone. She hadn't just insulted me, she had erased me. So I opened the laptop again. I downloaded statements, highlighted dates, organized transfers by year. I didn't dramatize anything. I didn't add commentary. I let the numbers speak. Each page felt heavier than the last, not because of the money, but because of the truth it carried. This wasn't revenge I was preparing. It was evidence, proof that my life hadn't been as empty as she claimed. As I worked, memories surfaced, small, painful ones. My mother warning me not to mention my help to my siblings because it would cause problems. My own voice agreeing, always agreeing, because keeping the peace felt more important than being seen. By the time the sun was high, I had a neat stack of papers on the table. I stared at them for a long time. Part of me hoped I'd never have to use them. But another part, the part that had been shrinking for years, finally stood up straight. I realized something then, something simple and devastating. My mother hadn't lied because she forgot. She lied because the lie worked. It kept her image intact. It kept me in my place. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. A message from her. "Why did you leave like that? You embarrassed me." I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. Even now, the story was about her. I typed a reply, then erased it. For once, I wasn't going to explain myself. I gathered the papers, slid them into a folder, and placed it carefully in my bag. My hands were steady. My heart was calm in a way it hadn't been in years. I wasn't planning a confrontation yet, but I was done hiding. The truth had been buried in numbers for too long. And when it finally came out, it wouldn't shout. It would simply exist, undeniable, unignorable, and impossible to erase. The next family gathering came sooner than I expected. A cousin's engagement dinner. One of those events where attendance wasn't optional and emotions were always performative. I considered not going. For a full hour, I stood in front of my mirror, jacket in hand, wondering if protecting my peace meant staying away. But then I remembered my mother's voice. Calm. Certain, public, useless, so I went. The house was already full when I arrived. Laughter floated through the rooms, exaggerated and bright, plates clinked. Someone turned the television volume down as I stepped inside, as if my presence demanded quiet without meaning to. My mother noticed me immediately. Her smile tightened, polite and brittle. "There you are," she said loud enough for others to hear. "I was wondering if you'd bother to show up." I met her eyes and said nothing. Dinner passed slowly. Conversations drifted from work to weddings to money, always money. I listened more than I spoke, my bag resting by my feet, the folder inside heavier than paper had any right to be. Then my mother sighed dramatically. "You know," she said, setting her glass down, "raising children alone is exhausting. Some help, some just take." I felt it then, the shift in the room, the familiar tension, the way eyes slid toward me without landing fully. This was the moment she always chose. I set my fork down gently. "I agree," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. Heads turned. If we're talking about who helps, I continued, maybe we should talk about facts. My mother frowned. What are you saying? I reached down, pulled the folder from my bag and placed it on the table. I'm saying I'd like to be clear. A few relatives exchanged looks. My aunt leaned forward slightly. My brother scoffed under his breath. Don't start drama, my mother warned. I opened the folder. I'm not, I said quietly. I'm ending it. I slid the first page across the table. This is a bank transfer from 5 years ago. Hospital bill. Paid by another page. Mortgage payment. Also me. Another. Utilities. Rent. Emergency expenses. The room went silent 1 page at a time. My aunt picked up a sheet, her eyes widening as she scanned the dates. My uncle adjusted his glasses. Someone whispered. Yes, I said. Every payment is documented. My mother's face had gone pale. This is private, she said sharply. Why would you bring this here? I looked at her then, really looked. Because you made my worth public. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply kept placing papers on the table. These payments span 7 years, I said. I never mentioned them because you asked me not to. You said it would embarrass you. I paused. I didn't think you'd erase me instead. My brother laughed nervously. So what, you helped a bit? That's family. I met his eyes. A bit doesn't keep a house standing. No one argued after that. The silence wasn't hostile. It was stunned. The kind that happens when a story collapses and no one knows what replaces it. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't say you never helped. I tilted my head slightly. You called me the most useless child you raised, in front of everyone. The words hung there, unsoftened. My aunt set the papers down slowly. Why didn't we know about this? I answered honestly. Because I was asked not to tell. All eyes turned to my mother. She looked smaller then. Not weak, just exposed. I did everything I could, she whispered. I know, I replied. I was there. That was the moment something shifted, not just in the room, but inside me. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I closed the folder and stood up. I didn't come here to shame anyone, I said. I came so I could stop being erased. I picked up my bag. I won't explain myself again, and I won't accept labels that aren't true. No one stopped me as I walked toward the door. Behind me, voices murmured, confusion, guilt, realization. Outside, the air felt lighter than I remembered. My hands were steady. My chest felt open, like I'd finally taken a full breath after years of holding it in. I didn't win anything that night, but I reclaimed something far more important. The truth. I didn't expect the quiet to feel so loud. The days after the dinner passed slowly, wrapped in an unfamiliar calm. No urgent calls. No late-night messages asking for help, no guilt-laced reminders of duty. For the first time in years, my phone stayed mostly silent. At first, that silence scared me. Then it healed me. I went back to my routine. Work, early mornings, late evenings. But something had changed. I wasn't moving out of obligation anymore. I was moving with intention. Every step felt lighter, as if I'd finally put down a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. The messages eventually came. An aunt apologized first. A long voice note, full of regret and disbelief. We never knew, she said. You should have spoken up. I listened once, then archived it. A cousin texted next. Then another. Words like strong, selfless, unfair filled my screen. They meant well, but they arrived late. The message I waited for, without admitting it, came last. My mother. We need to talk. I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't rush to reply. I didn't owe urgency anymore. When we finally met, it wasn't at her house. It was a small cafe, neutral ground. She looked older somehow, smaller, her confidence replaced with carefulness. She didn't apologize right away. Instead, she said, "You embarrassed me." I nodded slowly. "You taught me how." Her lips tightened. "I did my best." "I know," I replied. "That doesn't mean I deserve to be erased." She looked down at her cup. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" The answer surprised even me. Because I thought love meant endurance. She didn't respond. I took a breath. I won't be paying bills anymore. Not without respect. Not without honesty. Her head snapped up. "You can't just stop." "I can," I said gently. "And I am." That was the moment she understood. Not because of anger in my voice, but because of calm. The conversation ended quietly. No shouting, no tears. Just distance settling into place like a boundary drawn in ink. And that was the revenge. Not punishment. Freedom. Weeks passed. I invested the money I once sent away. I upgraded my life slowly, new shoes, a better chair, evenings that belonged to me. Small things, but they felt monumental. I learned how to rest without guilt, how to say no without apology, how to sit with my worth without needing witnesses. Family gatherings changed. Some felt awkward, some didn't happen at all. I stopped chasing invitations that came wrapped in obligation, and strangely, people treated me differently. With care, with caution, with respect. The label she gave me no longer followed me. One evening, as I cleaned my apartment, I found the folder tucked away in a drawer. The papers that once felt heavy now felt distant, like proof of a past life. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. They had already done their job. I thought about the child I used to be, the quiet one, the invisible one, the one who learned to survive on less so others could have more. I wished I could tell them this: you were never useless. You were carrying too much for people who couldn't see you. The sweetest revenge wasn't exposing the payments. It was choosing myself. It was walking away without hatred. It was living well without proving anything. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. I already knew it.